Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. Unfortunately, Chris's flight was canceled due to extreme weather, and so he will be joining us today virtually from the West Coast. My guest is among the premier musical tastemakers in the world. He began his career as a music director and host of The Morning Becomes Electric at the flagship Los Angeles NPR station, KCRW FM, one of the most respected and progressive radio stations in the world. He has served as an A&R executive at DreamWorks Records and was tapped by Steve Jobs and Eddie Q at Apple to create the iTunes Original Performances series and the first incarnation of Apple's playlist series, iTunes Essentials. In the film and TV circles, he's best known as a Grammy-nominated music supervisor for both American Beauty and the Shrek series, as well as a multitude of films including Austin Powers, As Good as It Gets, The Addams Family, and the upcoming animated feature, Blazing Samurai, based on Mel Brooks' classic Blazing Saddles. He continues to champion the best new artists from around the world on his weekly radio show and his long-running live music concert series, School Night, a breaking new artist showcase happening weekly in Hollywood and monthly in Toronto. During the pandemic, he co-founded and launched a new worldwide streaming series, School Night at Home, on Twitch, and is currently generating 20,000 weekly views worldwide. Please join me in welcoming Chris Douridas. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm so glad we were able to get you here virtually today.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Cool. This is not how I was planning to be there. Imagine my surprise yesterday morning. I woke up at 3:15 to go to LAX and saw that my flight was delayed 2 hours. Get up, hour and a half later, I'm in an Uber on the way to the airport. Bing, your flight is canceled. And I spent the next hour and a half trying to figure out a way to get to Columbus to no avail. There were no flights that could get me there before 3 o'clock this afternoon. So now I'm flying into Columbus tomorrow, and we decided to do this virtually. So it's a drag that I'm not there in the room with you guys, but I'm honored that you invited me. This program is incredible, and for me to be on the bill and part of this, I'm honored, and I'm pleased to be with you guys.
I'm so glad we were able to do this, and thank you so much again. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first question kind of for you is to kind of give us an idea of, how did you get started in supervision, and what's been the story of your career journey thus far?
Anybody that's got some years on them will tell you, shit just doesn't happen the way you think it's going to. You can plan all day long, and then at the end of the day, you just fall into things. Happenstance, preparation meets opportunity. All of those cliches come to bear on your life, and you wake up one day and you're in the middle of something you never dreamed possible. You never knew existed. I didn't know there was a thing called music supervision when I was in college. I had no idea. I guess if I thought about it, I was moved by music and movies, but I didn't know how it happened, or the steps that were involved in getting to those moments. You know what I mean? But for me, it started in college. I went to theater school. I was in school on a theater scholarship. I was studying theater. Acting was my thing. I was going to do that, and I had always been really passionate about music and theater and film. I grew up in a very musical environment. My mom loved to sing around the house and just had the coolest records in the record stacks. So I listened to all of her music. She played piano all the time. Every time Ray Charles would come to town, she'd go see Ray Charles. This was in Chicago. She was a big fan of Burt Bacharach and just good music. So I had that going for me, but I liked the idea. I loved to be involved in theater. And so I went to a theater school in Texas And I was waiting tables, as you do, between my work in the theater and doing plays at school and plays in Dallas. And I was a SAG member, I was an equity member, I was doing all that. And I kept seeing this radio station that we had on campus. It was like a campus radio station, and it was inside the theater building. So between classes and stuff, I'd always see this little KNTU, and I was intrigued by that. I'm like, radio? God, radio, that sounds interesting. I should find out what that's about. Maybe I could get involved in radio and do that in between acting gigs instead of waiting tables. It's kind of theater. Radio's theater, right? So I went in and I found out what it was all about. They were a radio station that was broadcasting to Dallas and Fort Worth. I'm like, wow, they have an audience. That's cool. And I volunteered immediately. And I got stuck on a news program, and I was doing the news one day. It was my first time on the radio ever. I'm sitting in the booth on a Monday morning, and I'm reading a story about the Pope getting shot at. This was in 84, 83, something like that. And I'm reading this story on the air about the Pope getting shot at in his Pope mobile. Not a funny story, but in the next booth, the DJ who was, doing a music show while I was doing the news, he cut to me for the news. He gets up on the desk on the other side of the glass, turns around, drops his pants, and pushes his butt against the glass, like inches from my face. And I'm trying to get through this story on the radio, and if that wasn't bad enough, he reaches back and he pulls his cheeks apart and starts kissing the glass. I'm losing it. I'm laughing during this. And I couldn't get through the story. We go back to the music, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? That's my, phone's lighting up. People are calling. Get this guy off the air. It's not funny. Why is he laughing? So I realized, you know what? I want to do what he's doing. Not the ass part, but I want to do the music show. So I just thought that was more my speed doing, so I ended up becoming a DJ at the college station, and I had a weekly show all through my years of college, every Wednesday, and I mixed all styles of music: blues, bluegrass, jazz, reggae, classical, Motown, unsigned bands from, on campus, and I just mixed it all together. It was like an eclectic show, as you opened with my beautiful intro. Thank you. It was an eclectic show, and I called it the Morning Exchange, and I got really good at it. By the end of the college, my college years, I was in my last year, and I was listening to the NPR station in Dallas while I was in school, and I was like, that place is, that's in radio, that's the thing, work at NPR. So I kept an eye on openings at that station in Dallas. Meanwhile, you guys, I'm doing plays, I'm doing all that still. And there was an opening at that NPR station. I auditioned for a job, I got it. And it was a classical by day, jazz by night NPR station, as most of them were, and many still are. And so I was working at this Dallas radio station, and one day during one of our creative meetings about the future of the station, they're showing the syncing numbers of the pledge drives. I'm like, we got to do something, any good ideas, we're open to them. And I'm like, hey, we should do like an eclectic format. Why? Maybe we could start transitioning the format away from the staid classical and the staid jazz. They're all good programs, but what if we started integrating more, contemporary stuff in the classical and more contemporary stuff in the jazz? And anyway, that's what we ended up doing. They're like, we have nothing to lose. So this Dallas NPR station started changing the format into the guy that was on in the morning doing classical would add in like Miles Davis sketches of Spain, or acoustic guitar instrumentals, and just kind of start to loosen it up a little. And at night during jazz, I was playing like Steely Dan and Elvis Costello and Marvin Gaye, and just kind of things that were jazz-ish. And we slowly over a period of 6 months converted the station into a full-on eclectic station. What he was doing in the mornings started meeting what I was doing at night, and we grew in the numbers and became really successful in Dallas. So successful that Texas Monthly Magazine did a cover story about the format change at KERA in Dallas. In the article of Texas Monthly, this cover story, they compared us to KCRW in Los Angeles, which I'd never heard of. And I was like, hold on, there's a station in Los Angeles that does stuff like this? Oh my God, because I wanted to move to Los Angeles because I was working in, I'm on this trajectory to work in film on the theatrical side, So I'm like, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. I'm going to work at that radio station while I'm doing the acting stuff, right? So sure enough, like 2 weeks after this magazine article, I go to LA, I meet the radio station a music director, and he's like, yeah, you should come out here. There's probably something for you out here. I went back to Dallas, put in my notice, and moved. Within a month, I was in Los Angeles, no job. Knocked on the radio station door, KCRW, and they're like, hi, well, we don't have a job or anything, but there's lots of stations in town. You could probably find something. And I was like, okay. I had like $1,000 in the bank at that point because I put down money for an apartment. Anyway, I ended up within 3 weeks, I was on a classical station in Los Angeles. The main dude in the morning had a heart attack right after I got to Los Angeles, and they needed somebody to sub for him. So I subbed that entire summer, hosting the morning classical program at KUSC in Los Angeles. At the end of that run, subbing for this guy, the guy from KCRW that said he didn't have a job for me announced he was leaving after 10 years. He was the host of Morning Becomes Eclectic, the flagship show at KCRW. What timing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He announced he was leaving. I swooped in and I got the job. And so I was in LA for 7-8 months, and I was 27, and I was running KCRW.
Wow, that's honestly amazing. And I'm sure you've, through doing all of that, the amount of music you must have come through and discovered and also learned, and just, I think that must have really, helped your musical taste and just learning and discovering so much. And I don't want to cut you off short, but I know that we have a certain amount of time to stick to. So I wanted to go ahead and, cue up our first video after talking about, some of the jazz and eclectic tastes, and cue up.
It's eclectic, just to clarify. Eclectic. It's a hard word, I know, but eclectic. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and cue up
What's the first one?
I believe it's Austin Powers.
Okay, so let me just tell you really quickly. Can I set it up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I'm doing this radio show. I'm getting, the audience, being in Los Angeles, the audience is ridiculous. Rachael was calling me, asking me about a song. You had filmmakers, people who were directing movies. Names I knew were Peter Gabriel. They were calling me on, what are you playing right now? I love this song. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, God, this audience is crazy. There was one guy who was calling me every morning for a while. His name was Michael Mann, and I knew him as the director of Miami Vice, and you guys know him now as the director of lots of different movies. But eventually I said, Michael, you can hire me as a consultant. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. So he hired me as a consultant on his new movie called Heat. And I ended up putting music, giving him music for this movie. That was my first job doing music for a film, which ended up being a cult classic. And when I started doing Heat, I think I needed an agent to negotiate that gig that I got. And so the city started to understand that I was available to do those things. And one of the next movies I got was Austin Powers. On Austin Powers, nobody knew what that was yet, of course. I went in for a meeting with Mike Myers, and he's trying to explain to me this new character. He's like stuck in 1967, before the Summer of Love, before '68 when the drugs all kicked in. '67 was sort of this, this flowery, poppy kind of everything is beautiful, everything is fun. He called it shagadelic, this shagadelic period of the '60s. And he was trying to explain to me what it was all about. And he shows me a video of him doing stand-up at the Groundlings, a comedy club in LA, just to show me his improv of this character because there was nothing to see. All I had was a script, So after my first meeting with him, I went back to KCRW and I'm walking through the stacks of CDs and I'm pulling things that, oh, this could be cool. And I made a compilation of tracks that I gave to Mike for the movie. One of the tracks was a favorite of mine by this artist, Rachael Roland Kirk, who worked with Quincy Jones on a thing called Soul Bossa Nova. That was on the first compilation. And the next meeting I had with Mike Myers, he's like, oh my God. He walks into the meeting with the CD, and he's like, you guys, we're going to redo the whole beginning of the movie. So he starts acting out in the meeting room what the opening of the movie is going to be like. He's like, it's like Help, like the Beatles, and he puts on this song, Soul Bossa Nova, that was on the compilation I gave him. And I'm watching Mike run around the room doing this whole like cheeky thing that you're about to see. Within a few months, we were on the soundstage at Paramount, the Lot in Hollywood, with 700 extras, and they were shooting this sequence and blaring the song on the loudspeakers across the lot. That now is, of course, the opening to Austin Powers.
Such a great opening.
What I didn't know when I submitted that music to Mike was that he would be reminded of this song too, because I put it on this first compilation, but I found out later he's like, yeah, I'd forgotten about that track. It was the theme to a song at a Canadian TV show that he grew up with, and he was like, the second I heard it, I was like, oh, yeah. But the reason I picked this to show you guys was I still, in my meetings with filmmakers, I still refer to this as an incredible example of why it's important to hire a music supervisor before you start shooting the movie. So many times we're brought on after they've shot the film, and they're either close to a rough cut or a finished cut of the movie, and then they'll bring in the composer and a supervisor, or they'll bring a supervisor and I'll bring on a composer. And then we're all like adding icing to the cake, instead of it being ingredients in the cake. That scene wouldn't have happened if they hadn't hired me in the script stage where I was feeding Mike music before they started shooting. Because obviously they ended up redoing the opening of the movie because they heard a song that they thought was defining that shagadelic thing, And then we built everything else in the movie off of that. That became the anchor for the movie. And then the movie blew up. Austin Powers became a thing. And then they ended up using that theme for the other movies, the other two movies. If Austin Powers, if Mike was to do another Austin Powers movie, they'd use that song again,
No, it's so iconic with the whole film series. I mean, every time I hear it, I think of Austin Powers. So
of course, yeah, it's crazy.
No, absolutely. And did you have any difficulty with, you make such a good point with bringing in music supervisors and composers, before the shooting. Did you have any issues with getting clearance for that track? And I know sometimes. So
I wasn't the music supervisor. They brought me in as a consultant because the first music supervisor they were having problems with. So then they brought me in as a consultant to work with that supervisor because they just weren't getting, ideas they were excited about. And then when I came on board and started feeding them music, they brought in, I was a baby. It was like my second movie project. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. All I knew was I like good, these songs are speaking to me from reading the script, So they brought in a more experienced supervisor, John Houlihan, who handled all the clearances. So I didn't actually clear the song. I didn't know about clearances for a couple more movies when I actually was getting my supervisor credits, I was just credited as a music consultant on this. So I did lots of movies where I was a consultant and I just did the fun stuff. And then later I realized to get some of those jobs, I had to do all the boring stuff too, or find somebody to help me do the boring stuff, which is the clearance part. So,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. And I'm excited to talk about the second clip that you shared with us, which is going to be Shrek 2, because I know, for Austin Powers,
Hmm.
had the idea of Soul Bossa Nova, but correct me if I'm wrong, for Accidentally in Love with Counting Crows, this was written specifically for Shrek 2.
Yes, that's why I picked this one to share with you guys, because it was like the sort of first great moment that I was involved in that involved a song written for a film, for me, in my world. Um, as I said, I started getting a lot more movies. Um, I was also Meanwhile, I was still doing my radio show and I was presenting unsigned bands on the air a lot. Beck, I don't know if you guys know Beck, but he's an artist who came through with demos that we championed early and I had on my show a lot. So my radio show started to become this sort of appointment listening for A&R people. Record labels were paying attention to Morning Becomes Eclectic because I was always playing these unsigned bands. Anyway, consequently, I got hired to be an A&R consultant at Geffen Records first, and then when DreamWorks launched, they brought me into DreamWorks I got an executive A&R position at DreamWorks. And as part of my entry into DreamWorks, by then I had done several movies, so it was a natural fit for me to pay attention to what the film side of DreamWorks was doing. So at the record label, I was the guy that was connected to the film side. So I was paying attention to what Spielberg was doing and what Katzenberg was doing. And so they brought me on as, again, a music consultant on the first Shrek. And on the first Shrek, my only job, which I failed at, my only job was to replace this song they had as a temp song at the beginning of Shrek 1, the first Shrek. Again, nobody knew what Shrek was yet. It was just this idea that was now sketches and now the beginning of what would be an animated movie. And they had this Smash Mouth song at the beginning of the film, just as a temp, to show what that energy should be like for the beginning of the movie. And my whole job was to replace that song. So, because that Smash Mouth song had already been a huge hit, and we wanted a new song for Shrek that would be a hit for this movie. Anyway, we ran out of time. I was never able to find a song that topped the Smash Mouth song, so Shrek came out with Smash Mouth on it. As we all know, it became a hit all over again for kids, little kids, because the Shrek soundtrack blew up, the movie blew up. They hired me back, surprisingly, on the second movie. And when I go in for the first screening of the sketches for Shrek 2, by now Shrek is a huge global brand, right? They show me the movie, and that frickin' Smash Mouth song was temped against the beginning of the movie again. I was like, no, I vow, I'm not gonna, let me find something. So I went to every major band, and a lot of not major bands, like baby bands. I went to everybody to get songs written for the movie. I wanted to give the filmmakers and Jeffrey Katzenberg amazing options, so we had no excuse, to fall back on Smash Mouth. So I had probably at least 50 original songs written for the beginning of Shrek 2
Oh, wow.
that were in that, kind of, bright, brilliant, fun mode. And the big bands at the time, from Goo Goo Dolls to Pixies to, Weezer, all these bands wrote original songs for free. They just wrote them on spec, which we can get into, because they knew if they got the song in the movie, it was going to be a massive song. So I didn't have to pay anybody to write demos. They just came flooding in. And a lot of those songs ended up coming out by those bands later that were, originally written for Shrek but didn't get used. So this is a crazy story, but I'll tell you. As we're getting close to the mix of Shrek 2, the movie was supposed to come out in May, and now we're in January of that year, and we're going into the studio with Weezer to record a song that they had written for Shrek 2. I found Weezer had given us a song that we loved, and we were going in to record it. We were going into the studio with Rick Rubin, and we had a documentary film crew was following me into the studio. We were going to be shooting some B-roll of the band setting up and documenting this new original song for the new Shrek film. And when we get in there with the documentary crew, there's like a icy feeling in the studio, and what's going on? And I could see the band in the studio. They're all like, what? I don't know. And I was like, I poked my head in the studio to say hi to the band, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't go in there. And I go into the recording studio, and I hear, and Rick has the microphones up from the studio, and I hear the, and I look at Rick, and I'm like, are we going to get a song today? And he's like, I don't think so. I'm like, and I back out of there, and I go tell the documentary crew, why don't you guys just hang out here? Long story short, there was a issue with said clearances that we talked about earlier. I wasn't doing the clearances on this. Again, so the bottom line was, apparently the band and River had negotiated some details on the song that River forgot about because he was off on a sojourn, and he came back and he's like, wait, did we really say we want, anyway, they didn't end up doing the song. They backed out. So here we were 7 years now trying to find a frickin' song to replace Smash Mouth, and the movie's coming out in May, and I didn't have a song. So I go back to DreamWorks, get all the A&R people in a room. We're like, okay, who have we not approached yet that could write a song in a week that'll win this spot? And we made a short list, and at the top of the list was Counting Crows. Like, I hadn't originally gone to Counting Crows. So we found Adam Duritz and the band. They were on tour in Europe, and got him on the phone, did this pitch. We're like, Adam, it's an unexpected love. It's a guy who lives in a swamp. He farts all the time. He's like the most unpleasant, smelly dude. How did he win the most beautiful girl in the entire kingdom? Like, it's unlikely. The love that wasn't supposed to happen. It's all that. And he's like, yeah, I totally get it. And he's like, you know what? Give me a few days. I just came out of a relationship like that. I know this story. So he 3 days later, he records a demo of a song at a sound check, one of the shows on their European tour, and they sent it to us, and it was a demo of Accidentally in Love. And immediately I was like, this is amazing. They ended up canceling their dates in England, flew Brendan O'Brien over there. They recorded the song in England, and it became the biggest song of their career. They got an Academy Award nomination and played it on the Academy Awards. The reason that I put that one forward again is I still point to that song as a perfect example of Adam writing about his own emotional experiences. He didn't go in and write a song like, oh, we're living in the swamp and it's, far, far away and all this. He didn't integrate anything that we already know about the movie on screen. He wrote about his own emotional experience that was similar to Shrek's. He put it was about the girl that he had just had this romantic fling with, that he had accidentally met at an airport because his flight was canceled, and he met her in the bar, and they ended up having this incredible whirlwind romance, and they went on ice cream benders, they did all this cool stuff together, and that's what he wrote about. And when you put it against the scene, it gave dimension to what Shrek was going through. It added to what was on screen. It wasn't so on the nose that it was describing what we were already looking at. It was adding elements and dimension to the dramatic proceedings, and it's a perfect fit that way.
No, it's absolutely amazing. And, I don't know if you can necessarily give us like a percentage, but how many of the projects that you've worked on would you say you are going out and doing, demos
Everyone.
And creating? Okay.
Everyone. Yeah. Because, it's always better if you're going to introduce a new song or a new artist to an audience through the movie or project that you're working on. It's always much more exciting. We can all sit here and think of movies that we love where we first heard so and so, or we first heard a song that you can't hear anywhere else except in that movie. You know, it wasn't. It was born out of that film. It wouldn't have existed without that movie or that TV show. And that's, to me, that's always more exciting if you can add to, you know, great music in the world. You know?
Absolutely, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
So then, you know, moving on to the third video that we
God,
have
time
from
is
you.
flying by, isn't it?
It
Am
really
I just
is.
talking too much, or is it just really flying by?
I think it's just flying by. We're all enjoying it, you know. This third video, which is with the TV show House of Lies. Could you set that up for us a little bit and talk about the music we're going to hear in that scene?
Sure. So, I don't know if you guys know this TV show, House of Lies. It was on Showtime. It ran for 5 or 6 seasons, something like that, starring Don Cheadle. I don't do a lot of television. I mostly do movies, but occasionally I'll do a TV show. This one, God, how do I set it up really quickly? But basically, Don Cheadle is a business image consultant. He goes in, and it was based on a real character. He goes into like a company that's having a PR crisis, or like imagine the OxyContin, you know, pill makers, those guys, the Sacklers or whatever, you know, and he'll go in and shine up their image, do something where they'll donate money to an orphanage or, you know, stuff like that, just to like polish up their corporate image. And that's what his business is, and that's what this show is, and that's why it's called House of Lies. He's like the best in the business. And in the scene that we're going to see at the end of this season, where the song turns up, he is getting all of the corrupt things and, you know, back end deals that he's doing are catching up with him. He's a shyster, and now he's having to face the U.S. Department of Justice. And in this sequence, we find out that his number 2 betrayed him. And you see her confess that, and you see, you know, the walls caving in on him. And it's an incredibly powerful sequence for anybody that was a fan of this show. And for me, I think it had a lot of resonance because it was reflecting my personal life. I was going through a relationship that I felt betrayed in. So I was moved by this scene. I was a big fan of an artist named Michael Kiwanuka, who was just brand new, and I was trying like hell to find some way to work with him. And I reached out to his management. When I saw this scene, I was like, oh my God, this could be for Michael. So I reached out to his management. I'm like, where's Michael right now? He goes, oh, he's actually in Los Angeles writing. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God, you have to connect me. I have an idea. Within hours, I was on the phone with Michael, and he's like, yeah, why don't you come by the studio? I'm here working with Gus. Gus, one of the bass player for Black Keys. And he's like, yeah, we're at House in Silver Lake. I go over there, and I bring the head of the show, the showrunner, with me. We just go over to this guy's house, the studio where they were writing and recording songs for the next album. And we're walking up to the house, and it's completely, you can actually see smoke coming out of the house, and it smells like pot. Like everybody in the house is clearly very stoned. So we go into this house, and I'm sit down with Michael and show him this scene, and Michael's a little reticent. Because this would be amazing if we can figure it out. And Gus is like, no, we got this, we can do it. Give us a few days. Okay. So I head off to Sundance Film Festival a couple days later, and I'm at Sundance that weekend. This is just 4 days later, 5 days later. And I go back to the ski place we were staying at, and it's late at night, and I open up my email, and there's an email from Michael. It's like, how's this? And he puts this song on. And I tried it against the scene, literally, while I was, you know, there at Sundance. And it never changed. It ended up in the show. What you don't know is he and her, they were lovers. They were in a relationship, and she had cheated on him. And as the audience, we knew this. And so it was just like, if you've ever had a friend betray you or betray your trust, that look in Don Cheadle's eyes is what powered that scene and powered the writing of that song, And that's where you take your cues. You take your cues from the script first, but then when you see the cut and you see the performances, and Don Cheadle is one of the best in the world, And when you see that moment, those are the emotional moments that drive all of these choices, you guys, You're there to serve those moments. I'm getting chills just thinking about it, and it's been 10 years since I worked on that show, So, yeah.
That's
Damn,
great
Michael
advice.
Kiwanuka hit it out. He hit it out of the park. I couldn't believe it.
No, it's
Yeah.
amazing, and the lyrical content goes so well with that. So,
Yeah.
I want to leave some time for Q&A, but I do want to ask one last question for you, for everybody in the room, and also online. Is there any advice or strategies you'd give for the students here and also young professionals that are interested in music supervision?
If you have a seed of passion, a little nugget inside you, a little spark, a little something that says, that pushes you in a direction that will lead you to happiness, follow that. Follow that. Don't ignore that. That's a gift. The fact that you have that inside of yourself, that you are aware of something that brings you that kind of joy, you have to follow it. You don't know where it's going to go. Don't think about, but what if, but I can't, I don't know. What matters is following your heart and following your passion. That's the one thing I would say to you. It's going to push you through so many other obstacles. And if you're doing that and following your passion, you're doing your homework, you're following up on leads, and you're not sitting on your ass, the money comes. The money will come.
Amazing, thank you. And, I want to open it up now for everyone here in the room. Is there, leaving some time for Q&A if anybody has questions for Chris? Feel free. I think there's a microphone over here, so feel free to stand up and ask any questions if you have them. Don't be shy.
I probably look really big here.
None? All right, well, if you don't have any questions, we'll just keep talking about, oh, okay, here we go.
Is it? Okay. So I'm curious, you mentioned working with, like, the examples you showed us have mostly lyrical content, so I'm curious how much work you've done with just, like, instrumental work for scenes.
That's a really good question. There's only one example of a movie I've worked on where we didn't have a composer. Usually when I'm brought on, there's either a composer already on board, or part of my job is to find the composer that we hire for the project. I'm working on a movie right now for Netflix called Slumberland, which is a gorgeous animated feature film about divorce, but it's amazing. And my whole job for the last 3 months so far has been to vet the composer options. So we've been going through the rounds of hiring a composer. And we have, because it's a huge Netflix movie, I can go to the top composers in the world, Oscar winner composers, and have them write a demo, something on spec, to be considered to be the composer for a movie. So that's what I did. So I've had, 3 all-star composers submit demos for this movie that I'm working on, and we just hired one. So usually those instrumental sequences that you're talking about are usually covered by a composer. When we sit down, after the composer's on board, we'll sit down and we'll go through the movie scene by scene, beat by beat. I'm on board, the composer's on board, we have a rough cut of the movie, we sit down with the director, and we're on the verge of a final cut. We're going to go through beat by beat and do what we call a spotting session, where we go through and say, okay, here, music should come in here. Great, stop, let's see, should it be score or should it be a song, If they're in a coffee house, it's probably going to be a song, unless there's an emotional moment where score overtakes it. We go through and we identify all those moments in the scenes in the movie, what's going to be score, what's going to be an original song, what's going to be an existing song. Maybe they're in the car and they're all singing along, so it has to be a song everybody knows, you know? The scenes, the drama dictates what you're going to use in those sequences. Sometimes we'll come across a scene and maybe it could be a score or maybe it could be something I find. And so the composer and I will both try to win that scene in a way. You know, we're not competing against each other. We all want the movie to be great, but we're presenting options, both presenting options for the directors, you know? The composer gives the director options for score that he puts his shoulder behind and believes in as are good possibilities, and I do the same thing. I never give the director anything I don't love, anything I don't like, anything that I can't stand behind. I only give the director options that I think are great. So when he picks any of them, I'm happy, you know? So that's how we do that. That's how we do the instrumental things. Sometimes you'll use an existing song, an original song, but you just want the instrumental part of it, and that's another way of going. And you'll just pull the lyric out when there's dialogue, and then go to the lyric when there's no dialogue, and you finesse that in the mix. That's how that works.
Thanks for your question. Any other questions? Hi. Yes.
Hi, how are you? So I'm the momager. I brought my daughter today. we just happen to be originally from the South Bay, and we know KCRW very well.
Oh, wait, is your daughter a singer, or what is your daughter doing?
What are you? An entertainer? Singer? Composer?
She's writing songs?
Yes, she's all of that. She writes songs.
Does she play?
She plays a little keyboard, a little more than she admits, acoustic and electric guitar. She's composing. Cool. And so as all these young people navigate, you know, this world of music, which is really changing, I've seen changes that you've seen.
Every day.
My question as the momager of this emerging composer is about the pitch. So how the kids are, you know, how they really are to pitch these days. You know, you're a music supervisor, you started out in radio, you know, you had a little winding path and journey. Is it that they copyright and go to a clearinghouse, or do they find somebody to pitch? I mean, you're taking these sometimes often unknown gems. Yeah. And you know, how could you just speak a little bit to that?
Sure. I mean, the fact that you're in South Bay and you know KCRW, the first thing I would say is when she's ready to share, I'm sorry you didn't tell me her name, but hi.
Cato Rose.
When you're ready, okay, hi. So when you're ready to share, when you feel like and it doesn't have to be a perfect, polished, fully produced demo. This is me saying this. Other music supervisors, other radio people might tell you something else. But I'm saying to you, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, you just have to, the demo has to come through, the song has to come through for you. You can sit at your kitchen table with a guitar and sing a demo, just like we heard Eleanor Dakota earlier. Oh my God, she's amazing. The girl that was singing before this. I was texting Josh, I was like, wait, who is this? She's amazing. And she was, you know, doing the fake trumpet, the brr, 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 at the, that was exquisite. I wanted a recording of what she was doing. Right, I'd play that on the radio because it was so genuine and so in the moment and beautiful. You know, if you guys recorded that, I want it so I can play it on the radio. It just has to come through, and you have to be fully behind the performance, and you know what I'm saying, right? It doesn't have to be a full-on produced thing. So send those to the radio station, send those to KCRW, send them to me. In terms of pitching, you know, a lot of people just write music to pitch and write to send to sync houses and things like that. That's one way of doing it. It'll earn you a little cash, maybe. But if you're an artist and you know you're an artist and in your heart you're an artist, go build your artist career and the other stuff comes. Go be an artist. Go, like Eleanor, get up on stages. Go perform. Make cool tracks. Put them up on Spotify. Start building your artist career. And then all the good looks are going to come, you know? You'll start building a team. You'll get a manager. A lawyer will be interested. You'll end up getting, you know, good tours and opening for people. And that's a much more durable path than trying to chase a sync by sending stuff to a sync house. And, you know, that's one way of going, and it's not a bad way to fall back, you know? If you're an artist and things aren't going so well, you can always do that on the side and make a little cash on. But I think, you know, holding on to your brand and carving a unique path as an artist is a lot more durable way of moving forward in the world of music. It gives you all the power.
Amazing. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. I think Shrek 2 and the Austin Powers were very good examples of just feeling the mood of film. And so I just thank you, like, just the sense of that is very good. But I guess my question is, what's your advice for feeling the sense of that? Or from like a songwriter's perspective, if you come up with just one idea, but it's not like fully fleshed out, because like songwriting's kind of like half lightning in a bottle and the other half is just meticulously figuring that idea out. So like, what's your advice for pushing through to get that to fruition eventually?
Well, not being a songwriter, maybe being creative in other ways. I think, you know, sometimes it takes time, right? In specific, as it applies to my specific world of music supervision, when I have people write songs for film projects, like this one I'm doing right now with Netflix, the Slumberland project, I had 20 people write songs for this one scene, and three of the songwriters, one of them a very, very famous songwriter, who if I told you his name, you would know him. He's one of the biggest songwriters in the world. He wrote 3 ideas for the scene because he just wasn't sure which way of going. He was like, I don't know if it should be more sentimental, if it should be more, you know, this, that. Should it be from the girl's perspective in the scene? Maybe it's from the guy's perspective in the scene. And gave me 3 different ideas, and they weren't finished. They were like a verse and a chorus, you know? It's like, I haven't figured out the rest. That was fine, it was enough, you know, because then I can say, this one feels more on the right path, and then at that point, I'm like, before you finish everything, let's get the director involved now, and have the director tell you more about the character's arc and the character's intentions, and that might trigger an idea. And so usually by that point, you know, the cascade of ideas and solutions and, you know, those will all start to come forward, and the songwriter can then, you know, finish the song. So that's specific to music supervision and the process that I'm talking about. But in your own world as a songwriter and a composer, I would say, you know, don't rush good stuff, you know, because you've got all the time in the world. You know, sometimes on our side we're on a deadline, but in the world of creativity, your deadlines are in your head, you know. So I've talked to, you know, the best songwriters in the world, Paul Simon and Leonard Cohen and Paul McCartney and all these guys, and what I've heard time and again is, yeah, I started that 10 years ago and I just cracked it like last week. You know, sometimes Leonard Cohen's worked on things that, you know, they took some time, you know. So I don't know if I can help you on that one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I also just shout out a quick blurb. I'm also with Brick City. Eleanor's EP is actually releasing this Friday.
I know.
If you want to listen to it, we'll definitely connect her with you.
Yes. Yeah, wonderful. Good stuff.
So
Brick City's
much.
doing cool stuff. That's one of the things I'm going to take away from this visit with you guys today is how cool this program is at Ohio University. I'm so impressed.
Yes,
Guys,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You know? Yeah.
Well, Chris and everyone here attending here in person and virtually, thank you all again for your time. Chris, I know this wasn't ideal. We would love to have had you here, but I'm glad that we were able to make this work. And thank you again so much, everyone.
Yeah. I'm going to be in Columbus tomorrow, so I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm going to see if I can swing by some of those closing events tomorrow, so I might see some of you guys.
Amazing, perfect. Thanks again.
Thank you.